The word of the Lord today is that God can change your heart and God can change your nature. God can change your heart. God can change your nature. God can turn a man around. And when I say man, I don't just mean man. I mean man and woman. He can change a heart. He can change the person. He can change the heart. He can change the nature of that man, that woman, that child. He can do these things. You know, I'm going to come to you from 1 Samuel chapters 10 and 11, and I'm going to give you a brief excerpt of what happened. So Saul, in these two chapters, Saul meets Samuel, who's a prophet, in this chapter. In chapter 10 is where Saul was looking for his donkeys that were lost. And him and his armor bearer went to look for the donkeys, and they were looking for a long time. And Saul was getting ready to turn back around because, he knew that his father would worry about him. But his armor bearer told him about Samuel that will be able to help them to find their donkeys. So it turns out that the day before, the Lord had spoken to Samuel and told him that he was going to meet the man that would then be anointed king, because the children of Israel just wanted a king no matter what. So as it turns out, when Saul went there, Saul thought he was going there for one thing, but there was another plan. So he goes there, he meets Samuel. Samuel says, he told him he said, I'll let you know everything there is to know about your donkeys. They've been found. I'll give you more information about that. But he says, as of right now, you need to come with me, come to this place to eat. He went with him to eat. Now, keep in mind, Saul was supposed to be going back home. But Samuel said, sit and eat with me. And then not only that, he said to him, stay the night, tarry the night with me. And the next day, I will tell you what else to do. Saul obeyed. He stayed there with his armor bearer. The next morning, Samuel said, get up. He woke him up. He instructed him as they were leaving. This is all in chapter 11 now. He says to him, let your armor bearer go up a little further ahead so we can talk. Now you got to understand, an armor bearer is one that normally stays right by the side, of the person that they're with, right? But guess what? He obeyed and sent him ahead. At that point, Samuel gives him the instructions and let him know that he actually pours the oil on his head and lets him know that he's been selected to be king. Of course, Saul was saying all the different things. I'm the least of the tribe of the Benjaminites. I'm the least of all the tribes. I'm the least of all these different things, right? But he told him, you have been called. In addition, Samuel gave him instructions on things he was supposed to do. There were people that he'll meet on the way, that he'll meet some prophets, that he'll meet some men. And he told him all he was supposed to do. Saul obeyed everything. He went and as he went along the road, everything that Samuel said would come to pass came to pass. But one thing that stood out to me that is said in Samuel chapter 11, 1 Samuel 11, is that when Samuel gave Saul these instructions, that the moment that when Samuel gave him the instructions and told him to go ahead and all the people that he would meet, that the moment Saul turned his back to go the way that Samuel instructed him, that at that point, guess what? He had turned into a different man. He had turned into a different man. Right at that moment, as he headed out to do what he instructed him to do. And when he met the band of prophets and he was singing and he was speaking and prophesying with him, God gave him a new heart. At that moment, God gave him a new heart. My brothers and sisters, it's all in your obedience. It's all in your obedience. You see, he had not yet become king, but he heard the word and he believed the word and he obeyed. He had to go home. He knew his father was going to be worried, but you know what? He stayed and he obeyed the word of the prophet. Take the prophet out of the equation. He obeyed the word of the Lord. And because he obeyed the word of the Lord, because what he did, he put his own agenda aside. You see, he went there looking for these donkeys, but guess what? He put his own agenda to the side. He knew his father would be worried about him, because that's the reason why he's going to turn around in the first place. But guess what? He went beyond what his dad would have felt and everything. He obeyed God in spite of what everybody else would feel, in spite of who had been worried. He obeyed, and in taking those steps, listen, it didn't make sense. He was the least, but guess what? He got the best, the choices of the meal. The choices of the meat was set aside. Guess why? Because he could have said, Saul, he could have told Samuel, listen, I gotta go. And guess what? He would have missed all of that. But he obeyed. He set his own agenda aside and his own concerns for his father aside. Okay, not that he didn't honor his father, but listen, he obeyed at this moment, not knowing he's obeying God, and he got the choicest meal. And guess what? He stayed. He didn't go home, and he obeyed when it was time to wake up. And in obeying the Lord, he didn't even know. When he turned away from Samuel to go the path that he told him to go, God had turned him into a different man. And when he went the path that he told him to go, and he met this prophet, as he prophesied, as the Holy Spirit fell upon him, as the Spirit of God came upon him, he got a new heart. His heart was changed. It's in your obedience. It's in setting your own agenda aside. It's in complete obedience to the Lord and trusting and believing in spite of. You see, Saul started to say how much he was the least in his father's house. He was the least, his tribes were the least of all the children of Israel. But guess what? God picked him. God chose him, and he obeyed. So I hear the Lord saying this. It's in total obedience. It's in obeying me. It's in setting your agenda aside. It's in walking the path that I instruct you, that you will be changed. Listen, he wasn't king right at the moment. There was no crown on his head, but he believed and he obeyed. And guess what? As he's walking to the next scene, he didn't realize that he had already been changed already. Some of you pray to God and be like, I feel the same. I don't feel like anything has happened, but it doesn't matter. You see, you are changed. If you go to God with sincerity in your heart, you have been changed. You just have to keep walking the steps until you get the manifestation of what the Lord has promised you, what he says will happen. Saul did everything by faith in spite of his background, in spite of who he was and who he felt he wasn't. He obeyed. He set everything aside. Listen, his father wanted him to come home. And guess what? He did what was instructed of the Lord at that moment. Some of you, your family, your people may tell you, listen, you need to come back here because this is who you are. You need to be here by this time because this is who you are. They want you to do listen, this is what they've known you to be. But I hear God saying, I'm getting ready to change your heart. I'm getting ready to change you, but you need to obey me. Some of you, you're trusting God to change other people. But I hear God saying today, listen, put everything in my hands. Walk your walk. Go the way that I've told you to do. Follow the path that I've told you to follow. And put everything else in my hands. God can change the heart of a man. God can change the heart of a person. God can change that person and make them into somebody completely different. I am a witness of those things. Who I used to be and who I am now completely differ. And it's not a struggle to serve the Lord. So my brothers and sisters, the word of the Lord is God can change your heart. God can change the very nature of somebody. But it's all in obeying him and following him and staying the path regardless of what people say. Because you will find even when Saul was anointed in front of the entire tribe of all the children of Israel, there were some that didn't like him. There were some that felt like really they didn't bring him any presents. They didn't bring him any gifts because they don't believe that he was called, but he was called. So no matter what people say about you, no matter how it looks, no matter who you think you're not, when God has called you and you're trusting him to do his will in your life, then all you need to do is obey. This is a word that I hear from the Lord today. Trust the Lord, obey his voice, and watch what he will do with your heart and with your very nature. This is the word of the Lord today.